Hello people, this is John Manimas, and this is my second video about economics. The title of this video is Who Creates Jobs? My previous video I talked about who gets the money. And you could see this time, once again, I'm not wearing a shirt. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is that it's very hot. The other reason is because while the investors were playing their gambling games on Wall Street, you may have lost your job or your house or both. Well, I didn't lose my job because I was retired, and I didn't lose my house because I had already sold it, but I did lose my shirt. So that's why I'm not wearing a shirt. But I'm going to get a new shirt. I've got enough money to buy a new shirt and a hot dog. So anyway, here we go. Who creates jobs? Well, corporations and the Republican Party have been trying to persuade you that business entities, corporations, especially big corporations, create jobs. That is ridiculous nonsense. No business entity creates jobs. They hire people. Oh yeah, they hire people, but they don't create the jobs. They hire people to make money. If you are hired because they are going to make money from your labor. Let me just turn this around so you can see this from the right viewpoint. The question is, what drives the economy? What causes all this commercial and industrial activity where we're making things and we're repairing things and we're building roads and we're building buildings and we're building ships, and we make everything from furniture to pizzas, cars, airplanes, all the stuff we make, all the services we provide to repair and maintain all of our gadgets and our tools and our homes. It all arises from demand, desire. People want something. And actually, if you really want to understand it in a clear, logical manner, you have to understand the difference between somebody who has a desire or somebody who just happens to have a lot of money, and this concept that I call the effective customer. Our economy is driven by the effective customers and only by the effective customers. That's where all the energy comes that creates demand and gives investors an opportunity to make money. And when they have an opportunity to make money, that's when they build buildings, buy machines, and hire people. So that's how the job was created, by the effective customer. So what is an effective customer? Well, it's really very simple. An effective customer has two traits, two qualities. One, you want something, and two, you have money to spend. That's right. You have to have both. You have to have the desire and the money. If you have just the money but no desire to buy, say, a bicycle, doesn't matter if there's a warehouse full of 1,000,000 bicycles, you're not buying. Now suppose there's a warehouse full of 1,000,000 bicycles and you really would like a bicycle. In fact, you want 5 bicycles. You have a big family. You need 5 bicycles. But unfortunately, at this time, you have no money. So you're not an effective customer. You can't buy the bicycles no matter how bad you want them. That's the way the economy works, and you can examine that. If you're having a little imagination, you like to think about these things, you could just follow it backwards all the way in our history to way back when our economy was far more primitive, when we just, grew vegetables. There were just farmers growing grains and vegetables, and there was a small merchant class. There were people craftsmen who made pottery and made weapons for defense and took care of horses or draft animals and raised goats and so on and so forth. Everything that people did to create, to make something or provide a service, a skill, to sell, was because there were customers. You have to have customers. No customer, no business, no nothing. And you have to have effective customers. A customer has to have a desire and the money to pay for it. So that's who creates jobs, you and me. Everybody. Everybody creates jobs. Everybody who wants something and has some money to spend. So you see, when we have a financial or economic disaster, it usually involves this sudden change, this risk, this kind of collapse where we realize that all of a sudden a lot of people are not going to have money to spend. Like people who work in factories, people who work in offices, people who work in institutions like schools. If all of a sudden they're not working and they don't have a paycheck, they don't have money to spend. Whoa! There goes all our effective customers. They still have needs and desires. They still want food and transportation and clothing and shelter. They still want all the stuff that they need. And they want some special things that they don't necessarily need, but they just like for fun. Luxuries, discretionary spending. Money you spend not on something you absolutely have to have, but something that you just want because it's fun. So if all of these people, millions of people, run out of money, then our economy runs out of customers. And there's nothing worse for an economy than the fading customers. You can't have commerce without people buying. So that's who creates the jobs and that's who drives the economy, effective customers. Now, I told you I was going to, in the last video, I said I was going to tell you about why the capitalists don't like Karl Marx. I said because, Karl Marx, he said something that hurt their feelings. And this is way back. This is in the late 1840s, 1850s, even before our Civil War, when labor conditions in the United States and in Great Britain, which is where Karl Marx observed industry and workers and cotton fields. And so this is the time and the circumstances under which Karl Marx observed people working. And at that time, working in this capitalist world was hell for millions of people, both in England and in the United States. In England, there was this area called Lancashire. Lancashire is actually a town or a city, but Lancashire and surrounding areas was possibly the most concentrated industrial project in the world at the time. Certainly it was one of the largest. Lancashire was manufacturing cotton and wool textiles. They got the wool. They used to get it from the United States. Eventually they got it from Australia instead of the United States. They got the cotton, a lot of it, from the United States. And Karl Marx also observed industries in the New York City area in the 1830s and 1840s. At that time, workers had no rights whatsoever, no benefits, no health care, no insurance, no workers' compensation, no time off, paid time off, no holidays. Most people work 10 hours a day for 6 days a week, some 7. Many of the employees were children by our standards today. They were maybe 16, maybe 14, some maybe even 12. They were desirable because there were certain jobs that can be done better by a small person, physically small. So if a 12-year-old boy or girl was willing and able and available to do the job, they hired them. And if an adult or a child lost an arm in an industrial accident, or a leg or a foot or a hand, they'd say, "I'm sorry you had an accident. I guess you made a mistake. Good luck. Go to the town farm and they'll take care of you. You'll have oatmeal to eat and a place to sleep." And that's it. That's what you get for working and having an accident in the 1830s and 40s and even later. There were none of the benefits we're accustomed to today. None at all. So Karl Marx was watching this. That's why he and a friend of his, I believe it was Hegel, who wrote a little pamphlet that said to the workers of the world, you should unite and revolt because you have nothing to lose but your chains. It was no exaggeration for him to say that, because Karl Marx and his friends, who called themselves communists because they believed in communal living and communes, they not only observed white people who were oppressed by their industrial jobs, but they observed the some 3 million black African slaves who produced the cotton for much of the world at that time, whose lives were utterly miserable beyond imagination. They were deprived of everything, not only adequate food, shelter, and clothing, but they were deprived of their names, their personal history. Children were separated from parents. So this is what Karl Marx was observing. People working under horrible conditions on the plantations and in the factories. I read Das Kapital, Marx's long work, which is supposed to be on what he called and others called at the time political economy. In other words, he was talking about how the economy is political. It's not accidental. The cause of the practices in an economic system come from the politics, from the opinions and power of people, power of the different classes or groups of people in the society. So the economy is political. And when I read that book, I was kind of young, so I'm sure there was a lot I didn't fully understand, but the observation I made was that Karl Marx was really a very good man. He was a scholar. He wanted to understand. He was trying to understand how things work. Why do we have this horrible injustice on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, in Europe and in the United States? Even after the United States wrote this wonderful Constitution which promised life, liberty, and happiness, so we thought, for a few people, possibly. So I immediately felt it wasn't fair to call Karl Marx an atheist or a revolutionary. He died in 1883. Karl Marx never fired a shot or hit anybody or hurt anybody. He was a non-violent person. He didn't participate in any violent revolution. The violent revolution in Russia occurred nearly 70 years after he died. So, the only thing that was happening in Russia in 1917 when they had their revolution is a group of people, artists, merchants, educated people in Russia were tired of their country being 200 years behind the times. They had an idiot royal family that understood nothing about the real world. They had serfs living in rags and hovels, houses made of sticks and mud, living on cabbage and potatoes. They were backward, and they didn't want to be backward anymore. They wanted to be a modern nation. So they used the writings of Marx and Engels and others to justify their revolution. Which is fine, they can do that. Karl Marx didn't cause a revolution. He made an observation, and his observations were quite accurate. The injustices of the world of the 1830s and 1850 were extreme and cruel. And the thing that Karl Marx said that so offended the capitalist was he said in his book, when you examine the industrial economy and you ask the question, where does the value come from? Like if a company is producing cotton or bicycles or tools, hammers and screwdrivers and saws, and at the end of the year they look at their books and they say, well, we sold $20 million worth of hammers or cotton or bicycles. So where did that value come from? Well, Karl said something that really hurt the feelings of those capitalists. Karl said, that value comes from the workers. It's what the workers did. The workers added the value. They took the metal and made it into parts. The cotton was in the field, but they picked it and they bundled it and they processed it. The cotton was made into thread and cloth in Lancashire by the people, by the workers. They produced the value. If the dress was $5, which would have been a price at that time in the 19th century, that $5 value was produced by the workers. That's what Karl and his friends said, and the capitalists have hated that statement ever since, because it makes it look like, well, why are we getting paid? Why do we get the profit? Why does the worker get $50,000 today and the owner of the company gets $2 million? Why? Well, the workers say, I'm the accountant. I'm educated. I'm smart. I'm intelligent. I have to be paid more. I'm the owner. I have to get, a percentage. I'm the manager. I'm the supervisor. I'm the one who walks up and down the floor making sure everybody's working. So I have to be paid a lot. So you see, this is the revolutionary kind of angry attitude that can be generated by this fact that the value is created by the workers. It can be used to justify hatred and anger at the people who are in the office, the people who don't get their hands dirty, don't do any heavy labor, don't carry anything, don't operate a machine, except maybe a typewriter or a computer now. I've had a wide range of work experience. I worked for an insurance company, and I've worked in offices. And in industry, the people who work in the offices, they spend a lot of time taking breaks and drinking coffee and having conversations. They do work, they do important things, and they make important decisions. But how much more should they be paid than the workers? Should they be paid twice what the workers get? 3 times? If you do the research, you find it's a fact that in many industrial and commercial corporations, the white collar people, the people who do the brain work and make the big decisions when they're being advised by people with a master's in business administration or a lawyer, they sometimes make 40 times what a worker makes, or 100 times, or 200 times, or 1,000 times. They draw huge, huge incomes because they're educated and they're smart and they're too good to do real work with their hands. That's the reality, and that's the real problem that has caused disturbances and conflicts and arguments and political clashes in the United States ever since colonial times. The question and issue of who does the work, who's going to do the work. I don't know how many people know this, but that was a problem from day one in the colonies in Virginia and in the colonies in Massachusetts Bay. People came over and they saw that they were supposed to maintain these plantations and produce products to send back. That was why they were financed. That's why their passage was paid to the New World, so that they can create money-making plantations. When they got here, they suddenly realized that that wasn't what they wanted to do. They didn't want to dig in the earth and plow. They didn't want to do the work. They need people to do the work. We know where they got people to do the work. First, from African slaves, and then from people starving in Europe. The poor serfs and people who were thrown off the land or had become victims of climate changes. There were climate changes in Europe in the 1500s and 1600s. And there were famines. And there were diseases. And there were a lot of poor people. Somebody said, you can get a ticket to America if you agree to work for 7 years or 10 years on the plantation. So we've had this issue in our country, and it's complicated and it involves a lot of different factors. But this is it, people. This is the reality we're still dealing with. Who does the work and how do they get paid? And who hires people? If it's the private sector of the economy who decides who's employed, that means they're deciding the fate of everyone. we can do what we want, can't we? Can't we design our political system and say, well, we're going to be the United States of America, we're going to be the state of Connecticut or Texas or California, any of the states, throw in this name of your state, and what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that everybody has money so that everybody can be an effective customer. And if the private economy, the investors, don't see the opportunity to use you and make money on you as an employee, your other option isn't just going to be to drop dead. You're going to have a role. You're going to have some contribution that you're going to make to the community economy, to the economy of the nation, and you're going to get money so that you can continue to function as a person and as a family and as a member of the economy. How do you do that? You do it if you want to do it, really. It really is that simple. This myth that the only way people can be organized economically is to have a group of capitalists on Wall Street control everything is nonsense. Total nonsense. You don't have to have a nobility that controls the economy. You can control the economy so that everybody is included all the time. How? You just have to make the commitment. You just have to say, this is what we want. We want everybody included all the time. How are we going to do that? You sit down and talk about it. You figure it out. It's just like any project that involves human labor and activity. We figure out how to mine coal, how to grow wheat, how to build ships, how to build space shuttles, how to build rockets that are going to go to Mars, how to build battleships, aircraft carriers. We figure out how to do stuff. And when we do that, it includes hundreds or thousands, in some cases, millions of people, each making a contribution to this economic enterprise. So our nation and each state is an economic enterprise. And all we have to do is say, the way we're going to do this is we're going to include everyone. Everyone's going to make a contribution and everyone's going to get paid. Karl Marx said, from each according to his abilities and to each according to his needs. And St. Peter, St. Paul, the apostles of Christ, the disciples of Christ said, everyone should work and everyone should eat. They should eat because they work. We don't tell anyone, we don't need you. We need everyone. I'm here, what can I do? You're hired. That's the way the economy works when it includes everyone. And everyone is an effective customer. It may sound wild to you, but it's possible. It's been done before, and you could do it right here in the United States of America if you want to. Thanks for listening. See you next time.